Hi traders, Forex James here, and in this video tutorial we'll cover about stop loss placement and where to place them correctly to avoid getting whipsawed in the markets. Most of you have probably experienced the feeling of getting stopped out prematurely and then the market just taking off without you in the position. Because as I believe, as I've spoken to many traders, most of us here are pretty good in guessing the direction of the market and the turning points, but it's just a matter of getting stopped out too early. In most cases, we get stopped out by a few pips and then the market just took off. Okay, so here's some tips I wanted to share with you guys on how to place better stop loss. Okay, number one would be to watch out for stop hunt zones. So what are stop hunt zones? These are basically levels that are so obvious and they're usually in a range. Okay, because remember guys, in order for the market to go along, they have to go down first and take out the stops here, because these are essentially sell orders for the people who are buying, who wants to drive price higher. Okay, so let's try to spot these levels together. Okay, here's a perfect example. Okay, so price has formed a range here, and as you can see in the range, it's basically a battle between the buyers and sellers. Okay, until eventually one wins over the other. So in this case here, people are jumping in to push price lower, and the buyers are still pushing it higher. Okay, so let me ask you this, guys. If you were to short this, most of you would probably put your stop loss somewhere here. This is common sense because this is what we're taught. Okay, put your stop loss a few pips above the pivot high. Okay, so there's a bunch of stops sitting over here. There's a bunch of them over here. Okay, so people are trying to go short here. Another attempt. And seeing this, the buyers, the market makers, the big boys, the smart money, whatever you want to call it, they made a stop hunt right here just to catch all these orders sitting down. Okay, so in order for them to push to sell, they need to trick the breakout traders who would go along right here. We'll put a green. So because this is the top and this is what usually are taught to people to buy the break of the resistance here after a confirmation. So people are going along here, guys. Okay, so this is an area of what I call the stop hunt zone. This is a tricky area where tricks are being played. So chances are, if you're not experienced enough, you'll be trapped in this, although you have guessed the correct direction, which is to the downside. Okay, let's look out for another stop hunt zone. Right here. As usual, there will be breakout traders selling off over here, guys. Okay, who are expecting price to go up, to go lower, sorry. And if you guys, hold on, let me insert this. this whole area here, oh my god, it looks ugly. Okay, what I'm trying to draw is just an area below this part here. This 1, 2, 3. So it's made 3 attempts testing this area, and people who are long, they have the stop loss over here. It's common sense. They're not gonna put the stop loss way below here. It's probably a few pips below. And guess what happens? Stopped out, and it goes to the upside. Okay, so these people here who have yet taken profits, they have guessed the correct direction, but they just have to be stopped out prematurely. Okay, so number one, these levels here, these really obvious ones, are prone to getting stop hunts. So watch out for that. Okay, that's number one. Number two is actually incorrect placement of stop loss. Okay, so many traders are always trying to get a high reward to risk trade. So although it is possible to make 5 Rs or 10 Rs, which is 5 times or 10 times the amount of risk in a trade, it's not always that easy. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is place your stop loss correctly. But what I've discovered is that for the sake of getting a high reward to risk, traders are squeezing in the stop loss. So let's take an example here. So for example, someone who has a short bias here, okay? And they probably see this turn in the market to the downside. So remember guys, the definition of a downtrend is lower highs and lower lows, right? So it's not technically wrong to put your stop loss here, but this trade is still valid when you get stopped out because it hasn't made a new high. So the correct placement should be above this point, because even though price retraced up this much and made a turn, this is still considered a downtrend. Okay, so just for the sake of using a tighter stop loss, some traders would just put the stop loss over here, hoping to catch a bigger return. So again, they've guessed the right direction, but they get stopped out prematurely. Okay, so let's take another example. So here's a second example. Okay, as you guys can see on the H4, we're in a downtrend. Okay, so we're making lower highs and a lower low. Most of us would be able to guess this direction of where this market would go to, which is to the downside. However, we would try and find an entry to join the shorts, the bears, okay? And it's not wrong per se if you go short, if you went short over here. It's only wrong if you went short over here and you have your stop loss right above this point, okay? Which again, you get stopped out. So be aware of the bigger picture and understand that as long as price is still making lower highs, does not exceed this point, this trade is still valid. So the stop loss should be placed at a point where if it gets hit, the reason for entry is no longer valid. Okay, so this is no longer valid when you think it's a downtrend, but price actually makes a higher high, which is a sign of an uptrend. So this is where you should have placed a stop loss. And again, this is actually a stop hunt zone right here. Stop loss is sitting down over here. This is a place of manipulation. Okay, so those are the 2 tips I can give you today. So be aware of these stop hunt zones. And the second is, do not try and squeeze your stop loss just for the sake of getting a high reward to risk trade. You'll get frustrated because you get stopped out so often. And as a beginner or intermediate trader, it's always a challenge for us to pull the next trigger after a series of losses. Alright, I hope you find these tips helpful. Thanks for watching, guys. Shoot me a comment if you have any questions.